So yes, it's not just about the data being kept secure, but about the fact you can prove that you've done something about it and kept your records secure, even with home workers, and that you've adapted in order to make sure these things can happen. So have a think about how could you do some form of assessment or audit yourself that your home workers are still following your policies and processes and keeping your data secure. Where is it being stored? Are they printing it off at home? If they are, what's happening to the printouts? When they've finished with those paper documents, are they shredding them securely? Or are they just going into domestic rubbish? So we need to be thinking carefully in light of the current lockdown and the different ways of working. We also need to think about if our employees are using their own home computing equipment, what sort of virus and security protection is there around that equipment? Have we done an assessment to make sure that it's sufficient and up to the standards we need and working well? Is it up to date? Is there any security? What sort of security have they got around their own broadband or internet router? Are they using Wi-Fi to connect? Is that secure? What sort of defaults are they using? Have they thought about it? Have you thought about it and assessed the risk? Have you issued any instructions? You need to keep all of these things up to date, as I said, and make sure all of your policies and procedures are reflecting the home working and any other types of remote working that you may have in place. We also need to think about how the liaison is going between the home workers and the people in the office. How are the records getting back into our usual records and form of record keeping? What's happening about backups? Are those records being backed up securely so that if anything were to happen to the records that are with the people working remotely, we've still got access to that information and those records as our evidence for AEO? And of course, then we have the question about when we come out of the lockdown and businesses reopen fully, and as people come back to work on site, if they do, how are those records and papers and data going to get back onto site? How do you make sure you've got a complete set, a complete record, and that you can maintain that evidence and that complete record set that you need? If, of course, you decide to continue remote working for some or all of your employees, you will again need to think about how these records get integrated into your central record set. So that's a little about what you need to think about during lockdown. And don't forget, you can ask questions at any time via the chat, or you can wait till the end and we will open the microphones for you to then ask your questions. So it's an important aspect of lockdown, especially around security, data security, equipment security, and the use of remote workers for that. Also, of course, thinking about how your supply chain and your site and perhaps your warehousing is kept secure whilst there are fewer people on site. Don't forget to make sure that all of those measures and controls you've had in place for your security are maintained or adjusted in some way, and that your records and your documents and your processes all reflect that. It's very important. So let's now move on and consider what's going to happen through the Brexit transition period for AEO. Well, recently, back in the autumn, we moved from a paper-based application system to an online UK system of applying via the hmrc.gov website. And you needed a .gov login and account in order to do that application. Well, sadly, there has been a change to that because the EU are insisting that the UK, until the end of transition, use the new EU portal for all AEO applications. So from the 1st of June, so not very long at all, just about a week's time, from the 1st of June, all applications for AEO in the UK must now be submitted via the EU portal. Now, you can only access the EU portal and find out where to access it by contacting HMRC. They are asking you to email in, and you have to send an email to the AEO applications@hmrc.gov.uk. I'll repeat that. It's email to AEO applications@hmrc.gov.uk, including your EORI number, your company name, that's the company applying, and an email contact for that company. If you have, say, a consultancy, such as ourselves, applying for you and on your behalf, completing that application process for you, you also need to include an email address for their contact so that HMRC can contact them. Now, the subject line of that email should read AEO new application. So the subject should be AEO new application. Then within 5 working days, HMRC will reply to your email and will give you a link through to the EU portal for you to begin your submission. It works in a similar way, we understand, to the current UK one, in that you must complete your C117 questions within the portal itself and then submit it. Now, the C118, however, you have to complete the old, what we might call paper-based edition of that. You can fill in many of the questions online, but you will likely need to have a supporting document in order to get all of the text you need into the answer spaces. So a separate document as well. That needs to be uploaded into the portal. It's not an online form as such. You have to actually upload forms, files for that. So again, it's going back to a sort of a hybrid between what we've recently had with the online portal for the UK and the old paper-based system where we filled in forms and posted or emailed them. So a bit of a retrograde step, but again, this has been forced upon HMRC, who are, we understand are not too keen on it, by the MASP, the Multi-Annual Strategic Plan in the EU. So they are insisting that we continue to use the EU portal, or at least begin, because we haven't been using it. Now, of course, this means that any applications that you've already started to complete in the UK portal on the .gov site, I'm calling it a portal, it's an online application, you fill that in at the moment in sections, and then once you've completed all of the sections and saved them, you submit the 2 forms online. Well, if you've started to fill that application in online, but have not yet submitted, you need to complete your filling in the forms and press submit before the 31st of May, or at least on the 31st of May, because otherwise you're going to have to start again in the EU portal. And I know how frustrating that can be. So if you've already got an application partway through in the current .gov site, get it finished if you possibly can and submitted before the end of May. Now, the interesting thing is that when we go through transition and at the end of transition, what are we going to do then? Well, on the 1st of January 2021, we will once again go back to having a UK online submission. We're not quite sure what form it's going to be in yet, because HMRC are working on their own online portal, for want of a better term. If that isn't ready by then, and it may not be, then they will be reverting to the current online.gov system of filling in the forms on the .gov website and submitting that way until their own portal is ready. So just to reiterate, until the 31st of May this year, so the end of this month, you continue to submit your application through the .gov website online, but you must have pressed submit, having completed it all, by the end of the 31st of May. From the 1st of June, you must submit new applications or ones that you hadn't pressed submit on in the UK form in the EU online portal, which you can access by emailing HMRC. So a very complex system really over the next few months, chopping and changing between the different applications. So make sure you think about your timing. If at the end of, towards the end of transition, you're looking like you're ready to go with your AEO application, what you need to do is consider whether you would be better off filling it all in the EU portal and submitting that way, or if you would rather wait, say a week or two, if it's the end of December, and use the new or existing UK method of getting that application to HMRC. It has to be stressed that whichever route you use, it all ends up in the same place with the same people at HMRC. The EU are not having anything to do with the assessment of your AEO application if it goes through the EU portal. It's simply a different routing method that they are insisting is used. So different methods depending on the timing of your application. Now, there's also a question we often get about those traders who are currently only EU traders. So cannot officially have AEO because they do not have any outside Europe international trade. Now, these applications have been being accepted and processed, but the actual accreditation of AEO is being put on hold until transition finishes. So those companies who are currently only trading within the EU, who are therefore not able to have AEO at the moment, can still go through the AEO process, but will not be able to use their AEO accreditation if they are successful until transition finishes, so not until the 1st of January 2021. But if you only trade within the EU at the moment, it is worth looking at AEO and getting an application ready and going through it in order to be able to trade using it as soon as the EU becomes a third country for us on the 1st of January. Now, the other question we get from that group is, can they use the guarantees that they have with AEO prior to the end of transition? And the answer there is a very strict no. Sorry, but you cannot. Now, at that point, I think I've covered all the main points that I wanted to do. I'm going to throw the floor open to questions. So I'm going to unmute everybody. Would anybody like to ask a question? Your microphones are all live. Would anybody like to ask a question?
Oh yeah, this is Claire.
Hello, Claire.
Hi. I just wanted to ask about, say you've got a situation where you've got something in place for AEO security.
Yes.
And then the health and safety thing for the COVID sort of kicks in as well. So I'm thinking, for example, maybe the office might decide to leave doors open where they didn't do before to stop people from touching them. So
yes,
would you fess up to things like that to HMRC, or would you keep them quiet?
Well, no, you can't really keep them quiet, but what you need to do is it's fine to say that you have had to leave doors open for that reason, but have you assessed what impact that has on your security? Why were the doors shut or locked in the first place?
Yeah.
What's the impact? What's the risk associated with doing that?
Yeah.
and how can you reduce that risk or
Okay.
mitigate that risk in another
Yeah.
way?
Yeah.
Do you see? So
Yes.
AEO, remember, is very adaptable, and it is supposed to be adaptable to all businesses and their different circumstances. Now, obviously, everybody understands that in the current climate, we want to reduce the risk of spreading the virus and not having to touch doors to open them. It sounds like a very reasonable thing to do. But it does mean you have to think more creatively about how you can prove that you're keeping your security.
Yeah. But
Right?
what I'm thinking is, if the two aren't compatible, then what
Well,
do you do?
AEO doesn't say you have to keep your doors locked.
No.
Your processes might say, and controls might say, this is how we control our security, how we control that people who shouldn't be in an area can't get access to it. But
Yeah.
maybe what you need to do is a proper assessment of what is the impact of leaving those doors open.
Okay.
Is it that perhaps you need to have a stricter clear desk policy so that when people leave their desks in an area that is now less secure because the doors are unlocked,
Yeah.
they have to lock away the sensitive documentation? And
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
you see what I mean? How
Yeah.
can you, it's something you might want to avoid in normal circumstances, if we can put it that way, because everybody hates a clear desk policy
Yeah.
and having to put things away every time they leave their desk. But in these current times, perhaps for a period of months or weeks while the doors are left open, then perhaps you need to think about things like that.
Okay. Right.
Does that answer your question?
It does. Yes. Yeah.
Jolly good.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Has anybody else got a question? No? No more questions?
I might just ask for
That's,
another one then, if
that's
nobody
fine.
else has got any. If you mentioned doing a risk assessment for the home workers, so
Yes.
so if you'd already mentioned home working in your security plan or your business continuity plan,
Yes.
I take it that would cover you, would it? So you wouldn't
I
have to
would
worry
hope
about
so.
doing a separate one.
Yes, I would hope so, because if you've assessed the risk of people working at home, as long as it covered all of the roles that you have working at home,
Yeah.
or was non-specific about role,
Yeah.
but took into account all of those factors, and that those are things that you put in place for those current home workers were being applied to any new ones that you've got at the moment, then it should cover it.
Yeah. So I'm just thinking, because I'm halfway through writing the security plan,
Yes.
and we haven't quite started the business continuity yet. So
Uh-huh.
if we put it in before we actually release the document, then that would be us covered.
Yes,
Yeah.
provided you, of course, remember it's not just having the policies and processes in place and the assessments, you need to have the evidence of it working as well.
Yeah. Okay.
And it's fine for things to start working part way through, if you like, your assessed period, because that's to be expected, that's improvement.
Yeah.
But you do need to show that you've got things and you can show a body of evidence that that is how things are working.
Right.
All right.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
don't forget the evidence. And as I say, I think the hardest thing for anybody to prove, any organisation to prove with people working remotely, is how you prove that you as a company can have confidence that they are following the rules you've put in place.
Yeah.
Because you obviously aren't going to be going around to their homes, for instance, and auditing them while they're there. So
Yeah.
what are those? Remember those questions about what quality assurance measures you have in place to make sure that your controls are adequate and working. Well, what can you say about the home workers and their security and
Mm-hmm.
data security and the like? It's a tricky one.
Yeah.
I don't have a ready to go answer for that one. It will depend on the circumstances and how you're already going about those checks. But you do
Okay.
need to think about what sort of thing can you use to evidence that they are working. Perhaps you could have a sort of a declaration that when they become a home worker or periodically they sign, you send them a reminder about the security requirements and they send an acknowledgement back that says they are
Yeah.
complying. It's not,
Okay.
as an auditor, it's not a perfect solution, but it's something.
Yes. Yeah.
In place.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Well done on working on the assessments and the security. Is everybody clear about the different application methods depending on the timing of your application? Hopefully you are.
Yes. Yeah.
Good. Good.
Claire,
Right. Yes.
ask a question.
Of course you can.
How will HMRC decide whether it's safe for them to come out and visit site?
Well, they haven't given us those details, but I suspect it will be looking at the government restrictions that are in place at the time, the fact of whether they need to use public transport, what it is they'll be talking to you about, what measures you've got in place on your site, that type of thing.
Okay.
But I wouldn't expect them to be doing many assessments at the moment, if any, until more businesses are back up and running and things are, we've gone down maybe a risk level, then I wouldn't expect them to really begin in earnest going out to audit at site.
Okay.
There may be some exceptions to the rule, you know, if it's a site that's usually extremely secure on the germ front, such as a medical type organisation. But for others, I would expect them to wait nearer the autumn.
Okay.
I can only take that under what I would expect because there is no hard and fast timetable on that or any assessment criteria that have been published.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you, everybody. And I hope that's been useful to you. If there's no more questions, we will conclude the webinar there. And I hope that you'll all join us on our other webinars. We have another one later this afternoon on Origin and one next week about the new UK tariff that's coming in and has been published. And of course, if you are looking for help with AEO, we have our AEO practitioners course in September, which we are very much hoping will run. It's looking like it will at the moment. Thank you, everybody. We'll complete the webinar there.
Thank you, Claire.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.